So in this video, I wanted to capture the installation of bind and the lab setup that I have. Let me kind of go through the lab setup quickly for configuring bind, testing bind, and just testing the load balancing stuff. What I have in my lab is essentially two EOS routers, and they are connected to the Centos machine on the same network or subnet. So here's my Centos and Centos 7. What I do is I install Centos minimal, which is a small file downloaded, and then kind of run the yum update on it. And that's going to take like 30 minutes to update all of it, and then kind of install Nano, which is an editor for editing the files. So yum install Nano. And then once you have your CentOS up and running, you can install bind on it. And I'll go through the steps to test this setup. So in my case, this is a 1.1.1.0/24 network. This is a .2, this is a .1, and this is a .111. And these guys will be pinging a URL. And the DNS server will resolve that URL. So you have to configure the VIOS for the name server to be 1.1.1.111. And I'll go through those configuration. Once you have this setup, which is a very straightforward small setup, you can ping the URL, you can create a zone file here for whichever zone you want to test or URL you want to test. And I'll go through the zone file and everything. But once you have this, I mean, the documentation online is overwhelming. So I'm trying to simplify how to get bind working as a master authoritative DNS server. So once you have this setup, which is very simple, you would do this. Your step 0 would be to install bind, and that you can do by doing yum install bind util. Okay, once you have this thing configured, your next step would be to edit the files. The first file that you're going to edit is going to be named.conf, which is going to be under etc named directory. So the name of the file is name.conf. You're going to run nano etc named.conf, and then the file would look like this. So if you look at this file here, named.conf, you have to edit, and in the options section, make sure if you're not logged in as root, you do sudo. In the options section, you're going to include the listening IP address, which in my case is the CentOS IP address, right? So you have to add this guy. The second thing that you got to add is the allow query. By default, it's this. You're going to add your subnet, or what I did was I added everything. Make sure you have all the semicolons, otherwise this is not going to work. Okay. This is the second edit. The third edit that you need to do is include this file, this line, and saying that this is where I am going to be pointing my zone files. So these are default. You're going to include this file name, a pointer to this file name, which is going to be sitting under the named directory, and we're going to create this file. Okay, so that's going to be your .2 is edit configure the name dot conf dot local file. Let's take a look at it. Nano name dot conf dot local file. Basically, it is creation of your zone file, saying this is the URL, like www dot whatever, or not the A record, sorry, it's just a domain name, cisco.com or abc.com or whatever domain name that you are. I'm just making it up 1.2. Type master, very simple. And then you're again pointing it to another file, which is going to be containing the information of your zones. So it's going to be in the zones file, zones directory. You can put it in any directory, but you have to, just to simplify, you can create a separate directory under named and put a file called db dot and the domain name, right? Once you're done with this, you would go, let me give you a peek of that. Okay, before, obviously before you create that file, you're going to have to do mkdir named and then zones. In my case, I already did that. So here's the zones directory and here's the file. And here's my, let's see what the files are looking in. Here's the db 1.2. So I'm going to edit that. This is where your most of the information is about A records and what have you. This is like pretty standard stuff. So you're gonna put this as it is. I minimized. This is a serial number. You can make it up, whatever. I just put, I just changed it from where I got it. These numbers you can change it. These are in seconds. So because I want it to be quicker, so I change all these to 1. Except for the retries, you can change that too if you want. Then your first record is the name server record. That basically is saying that my name server is containing this domain. And then your A records that would resolve your URL to an IP. So this domain is listening on the 111 address. And the A record in that domain are 2, right? I have 2 for load balancing. So I've got a www, 1 second, refresh every 1 second, a record, and 2 IPs, 111.50 and 111.51, and the CNAME, which basically means that if somebody types in www.1.2, they get resolved first. They will get resolved to .50, and the second user would get resolved to 51. If you type abc.1.2, you would get resolved to the A record of www, which is again here. So, you know, 2 names, it's like a canonical name or CNAME. It's like a alias to the existing A records. So I have kept things very simple just to show how this lab would work. Now for the IP addresses, what I did, I used the command IP link add. So if I show you my links, it's got tons of interfaces, but I used the dummy interfaces, dum0, dum1, right? How do you create that? The command for that is, let me first show you if config dum0, configure with 150 and 51, okay? IP link add interface dum2 type dummy. Now if I go do IP config dum2, you can see that interface came up. See? That's just for configuring the IP addresses so that you can get a ping response from the Centos server. All right? And the Centos is basically sitting on a Ethernet, this address. It's listening the DNS on this address and all the other. This is my management interface. And all the other is dummy interfaces. These are the virtual interfaces, okay? So once you have the setup, you would now, basically you're ready, because now you have the file structure configured and zones and everything configured. Now you got to add VIOS show conf. Your name server is configured to 111, okay? And then if I ping, and obviously you gotta go do system control start named service, okay? It's already running for me. You can check the status to see if it's already running or not. For me, status of name dot service, it's running. Okay. If it's not running, you're going to use this command, start name dot service. And if you have any punctuation, any brackets or semicolon errors, this service is not going to start. So you may have to make sure that the format of the file is pretty accurate. Once you have this started, the one other thing that you got to do is you got to stop the firewall. So system status firewall D. Either you put in the firewall rules, but this is a laptop. So what I did, I just stopped it. I don't want to go through the hassle of putting the firewall rules, so I just stopped it. So because if you have this guy going, if it's on, it's not going to resolve. So you have to either put the firewall rules or just stop it. Okay. Once you're done with this, your service is up. You should be able to resolve www 1.2. It's resolving to 50. It's resolving to 50. It should resolve to 51 as well. There you go. It's round robin. So your A records are working, and your CNAME, which is abc.1.2, is also working. So this is how you would do a bind test with A records and simple testing of how the load balancing would work. It kind of clarifies how the DNS load balancing work. You can also go in BIOS and do something like this. Go to bash shell and say dig. And it's going to give you all the information of the A records. It's resolving to 2, right? So, and your server is configured to be, DNS server is configured to be 111, listening on port UDP 53, stuff like that. That's pretty cool way to test DNS, because that's in the data center. Products like F5 and NetScalers, they use DNS capabilities to resolve the URL into different IPs. And once you can get this thing working, which is pretty simple, the documentation online obviously is overwhelming. So my intention here is to simplify it. Let me know if it helps. If you need any further assistance, drop a note and I'll be glad to assist. Hope this helps.